All right. Welcome everyone to a conversation about Newport Mesh, hosted by Laboratory B. Lab B is Burlington's hackerspace. And we have been, since the pandemic started, decided we want to start doing a little bit more kind of remote virtual education opportunities. So this is going to be a conversation that will feature Diane Peel of Newport Mesh, and Martin Kennedy, who's a Lab B member who's been providing some technical support to that project. So we're recording the session, and we'll put the recording up afterwards. When we get to the Q&A, folks are welcome to submit questions or comments via the chat or the Q&A feature. Or if you'd like to just join the conversation, just say so in the chat, and I'll be happy to add you so you can speak, just to be aware that you will be on the recording that's posted. So without further ado, I'm Matt Kropp. I'm also a member of Lab B, and I'll be kind of moderating tonight. And so maybe we'll do a quick round of introductions to start. So Diane, do you want to just give a quick introduction to who you are, what your role is with Newport Mesh, and anything else you want to share?
I'm Diane Peel. I'm retired, and I guess I gave myself the title of project coordinator. So I sort of coordinate everything. I've learned to do a lot of technical stuff too, which has been tons of fun.
Great. And Martin, you want to unmute yourself and give a quick intro?
I always mute myself to prevent sounds like the cat. I am Martin Kennedy. I am also, as Matt said, a member of Laboratory B. And I guess my background to the mesh really is just kind of one of experience. I was very interested, I think, at the kind of towards the end of my college career at University of Pittsburgh, really interested in interconnected wireless devices. And I actually happened upon Diane Peel in a newspaper article back in 2018. So how fortunate is that? So I've been essentially finding new pieces of hardware that can be integrated into the Newport Wireless Mesh, but also I've been interacting with folks across the country and even in Canada, working on all kinds of other ways to use similar networking technologies to do different things, but all under the guise of different meshes or different little internets of interconnected devices. Yeah, so
cool.
That's about it.
All right. So to start us off, let's I think it'd be good to ground this conversation on a bit of background on what is a wireless mesh. What differentiates it from just having an elaborate Wi-Fi system, say, in a building that a company runs or something like that, and differentiates it from kind of more of a traditional ISP or things like that. So maybe Martin, do you want to take the first stab at that, answering that question, and then Diane, add any additional kind of things that you think of when you define what a wireless mesh is?
Yeah, so I would say, and I would even caution not to say wireless specifically, because when we look at different community-based organizations who are putting together networks, oftentimes they don't even use wireless connections. They don't use direct connections at all. Some meshes are made simply by making secured and coordinated connections already over the internet as kind of a subnet of the internet. But in at least in the case of Newport, a wireless mesh is a group of interconnected, loosely coordinated, self-configured devices that use Wi-Fi as you know it, for the most part, to communicate with each other and to offer connections to different things, like, for example, the internet, or to other parts of that same mesh or other subnetworks connected to that mesh, to the other members connected to that mesh. So, for example, when you're connected to the Newport Wireless Mesh, you can actually connect to the internet just on account of your connection to the router that's in the mesh. And that works through a bunch of different ways, and it gets even more complicated when you consider other implementations of mesh networks, so-called. but it is certainly, it has a lot of unique properties that being connected to the internet via, your home Wi-Fi router doesn't have. So it is certainly its own thing, and it has its own potential, which I'm sure I'll have time to get into later. Yeah, and what we can unpack later. This is just to ground it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Diane, what do you want to add? Anything on sort of like what you see as defining what is a mesh and what makes it different than other kind of ways of connecting computers?
Historically, I think the meshes were developed for when you have just lots of devices connecting to each other and then connecting to the internet without any central thing that's running it, any central authority. And I think it was also designed for nodes that, people connected that might be moving around a lot. So they all have to stay in connection with each other despite the fact that they're moving. The way meshes have been, and even the way ours has been implemented, is not a true mesh. It's as mesh-like as I can make it. But for one thing, the nodes, of course, are not moving around. But also, just because of interference and other stuff, they're not always, every node in the mesh does not connect with every other node like it should ideally. And we do use non-mesh routers as bridges from our gateway that kind of help us get around obstacles and speed the whole system up. So it's kind of a hybrid system. A lot of things that are now like I think NYC Mesh and the Detroit Mesh Project still have the word mesh in their name, but I think they're not very mesh-like anymore. And I'm really trying to keep it as mesh-like as possible.
And so conceptually, kind of the highest level, thinking of it as almost something where you have, say, device A that could connect to device B. Device B is connected to both device A and device C, and device C is like connected to the internet. So device A can kind of go through B to C to talk to the internet or talk to another device, something like that.
And it should run, if you really could have it be a correct mesh, the way it should be set up, it should run without the internet as its own system, which is a real plus, might be a real plus in case of, you got cut off from the internet and you needed to communicate with people. That's the original idea. I'd like to try to get back to that as much as possible, but technically there's issues involved there. Even if cut off, they all talk to each other in theory.
Yeah. So okay. So then, kind of taking it from that big picture. Okay, here's the idea of a mesh that's been floating around for a long time. How did the idea of starting a wireless mesh gain traction in Newport? Right. What was the need that you kind of saw there, and what, kind of how is it unfolded, and was it started and kind of grown over time? What's the story?
Well, about, I think at this point 5 years ago, but I have kind of lost track of time. We had not so active now, but starting about 7 or 8 years ago, a community center here. We still have the community center, but we don't do as much stuff now. And we have done up until this year a lot of projects in the neighborhood. We have a block party, we did a newsletter, we did a veggie giveaway, we have the center open for people to come and visit. In other words, so we just did a lot of community stuff. And that in fact grew out of a group that originally got started related to Occupy Wall Street many years ago. And we did not have a place to meet. And we just used to meet like at churches and stuff, and we wanted to have a place to meet so that we could actually bring the community in to us instead of us going out and like standing on corners and stuff. So that's how we ended up with a physical space. And then one of our group members, his name is Marina Brown, went to apply for, she's an internet systems administrator, IT person, and went to apply for a job at Commotion Wireless in Washington, DC. And she came back and said, they have this great website where you can set up your own wireless system in your neighborhood, and it's really easy. So, so I said, wow, that sounds great. That's like another project for us, you know, to extension of all the stuff we've been doing. We're giving people vegetables, we'll give them internet too. So, so she sat me down with we bought some eBay used Ubiquity routers, and that was when you could still flash them with third-party firmware. And she showed me how to use the upgrade to put on Commotion Wireless, and we used the instructions from Commotion Wireless. And the thing that I found out was it is not easy. So that part it is there. If you want to have a good functioning system that's going to compete with Comcast, it is a real art.
So you kind of had this idea, you know, the kind of community of folks who are doing community-oriented projects, and so that was a solid base to getting this at least started. And so, what was the, you know, in terms of what the options that exist in Newport, right? So you know, Laboratory B, where I'm a member, is in Burlington. So we have, like, you could get Comcast, you could get Burlington Telecom. You know, there's a few options there. What was the existing infrastructure when you started this in Newport like, and how did you see this this mesh as helping fill any sort of gaps or offer an alternative?
Unlike some rural areas in Vermont that have no internet, and people would be happy to pay any amount of money to have it, probably, if they could get it. There's a lot of internet in Newport. It's all supplied by two companies, Comcast or Consolidated, primarily Comcast. But that's not the problem. The problem is that this neighborhood is very low income. Mm-hmm. There's a high percentage of children below the poverty line, et cetera, all your demographic things that you want to list. And Comcast, you know, if you get cable and internet, or even if you just get internet by itself, because they try to bundle everything, so you don't get any deal for just getting internet. They charge people, you know, $60, $70, $80, $90, $100, $150 a month, usually up around $100 or more even. And most of the people in this neighborhood are on receive benefits of some sort, or they have low-income jobs. They may work at Walmart or something like that. A lot of people that are on disability have an income of, you know, say $900 a month. And if you take 100 or 150 out of that a month, that's a big chunk of your income. The fact is that people are humans and they want entertainment, and they do spend money on that if that's their only option, which means that at the end of the month or in the middle of the month, they may end up having to go to the food shelf because they have spent their money on their internet and they don't have any money left for groceries. So I don't think a lot of people realize that low-income people need to have access to the internet, and they need to have knowledge and information as much as anybody, and they will spend money on it. So it behooves us to make it more affordable for them, so in their limited resources they can, you know, they can be able to spend their money on other stuff too that they need, not have it gobbled up. Comcast does have a program for low-income people, which is very limited in its application and very hard to get onto. So we serve a slightly different population of people that cannot get onto that program usually.
Cool. So getting to nuts and bolts, you know, when you both kind of when you started, what was the kind of footprint that you all were starting in, and what's the kind of organizational business model to the thing? Is it something where, you know, it's primarily volunteers and, you know, you have existing internet connections that people connect to through it? Is there like a more formal organization that has some sort of like essentially bulk internet contract type deal, or what, like how does it kind of like fit together operationally?
Well, we had to become a nonprofit in order to get grants to help out. So that means we have to have a board of directors and all that stuff that goes on with being a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. And we do have a contract to purchase our backhaul that we have from our gateway, which is fiber optic over at the United Church. Beyond that, we have volunteers. We have people that help out with various things, and we have 2 or 3 people that do installation, and we have somebody that's just Lisa, our accountant, treasurer, who's given a lot of her time to getting us straight with the business part, which I am not a good business person. I would love to have this just be free, like everybody could just get free Wi-Fi, but right now we're asking them to pay a small amount to cover, so we can cover the cost of the backhaul. And we have volunteers doing various things, and nobody gets paid. I don't know what else to say about that. The business part is tough. I mean, that just the logistics of record keeping and so forth for subscribers has been really hard for me. My tendency was to keep stuff in my head and on scraps of paper written around, and so Lisa's gotten us kind of organized with like QuickBooks and stuff like that.
Yeah, at a certain scale, that there's only so much space in your head to keep track of that sort of thing. So 2 questions before we get into some of the more technical conversation. But so on the one hand, you said you have folks who are who kind of essentially subscribe. How do you handle the logistics of that? Does each have kind of a separate login that's connected to an account? Is it something where it's more honor system? Like how do you manage the sort of members of the or subscribers of the service?
We don't have accounts yet, maybe someday. Basically, we'll give people we come in and install it, and then we give them a month to use it for free to see if they're going to work for them. And then if it does, then we ask them. Some people pay for the whole year if they're able to do that. We've had people do that because it's $12.50 a month, for the whole year. So, or if they want to just pay $15 a month. And because people's incomes are low, it's touch and go on, we have kind of, it's unlike Comcast, we kind of have a personal relationship with all the people that are subscribing. And I come over and do other stuff, like we also give computers out, which Martin has helped us with immensely. It's been great. It's wonderful. We have lots of people. Other people have donated too. Fellow over at the United Church, Chuck Newton, has also donated a lot of computers. So we have helped people get the computers, learn how to use them. I go over and troubleshoot them a lot. And so the idea is to sort of build a rapport with subscribers so that, it's not just a business relationship. It's more of a family relationship, if possible, because we're really just relying on people's good graces that they will show up every month with their $15, and they usually come in with cash.
And so I guess one other question on how many folks are using the network at this point?
Well, it's still really small, so I'm kind of embarrassed to even say that we have only 18 households on at present. Our break-even point for the bandwidth is 26, I believe, and that way we'll be self-sufficient. The reason why we have so few people is because just building the access points has been a real slow process. We have to get permission from private people on homes and businesses to put things up. So it's been really slow. And then a lot of people are in Comcast or consolidated contracts. It's hard to get out of them. And we actually had one person, though, who actually did cancel his contract because he did the math and he figured out that it was actually cheaper for him to pay off the money that he still owed Comcast on the contract. And because he was paying like $100 a month and now he's paying $15, and he has already paid that back. I mean, and so he he figured that out, but not everybody, is willing to do that. And the contracts are hard to get out of. And then we have people that just don't get it or understand what it's about. And, they don't really want to try something new. So, and another thing is quality of service, which is good. People are, much to my amazement, especially since Martin has helped us, because since we did the beacon interval change, things have been much better. People are getting, I'm sure that they're getting plenty for all their purposes now. They were getting okay before, but it's just, I feel much better now. But people are able to stream TV. I think if they were going to do like some serious uploading or downloading, they might find it a bit of a problem. Or for gaming, it's not really good for gaming. But most of our subscribers now get their television through the mesh,
nice.
Which
so
people want.
So kind of working up the chain from the end user, and Martin, I'm also curious to hear your some of your insights into this as well. But so you're like, okay, so I live somewhere. I'll subscribe for my $15 a month. I get the wireless comes into my house. You said you will install kind of an access point at the particular person's house or apartment or something, right?
Well, they have their own home mesh router. We start with our gateway at the United Church, which is connected to fiber optic cable, and then we send that through bridges to access points. We have 9 of those around now, and then people pick up in their homes from the access points.
Okay, so it's basically you have this church is the sort of
right
the gateway to the outside world, right, to the internet as a whole, and then you have a number of kind of wireless things that are in range of that church that can kind of talk to it, and then those themselves then talk to the individual home Wi-Fi type.
They do, but all the home Wi-Fis, they connect to each other. They connect to each other too. So as far as is possible, by keeping them on the same frequency. The reason why they don't all connect with each other is because we sometimes have a lot of interference in a particular area, and we have to switch to a different frequency. We did start out with everything on the same frequency, but it just was impossible to maintain. So it is the bridges help get it into the mesh, and really literally. There is sometimes a very small window of opportunity. We have, we're doing just one now that we sent up a drone. I saw from a photo that there was just a sliver of a chimney that was showing from the church that we could get one of the bridge routers on. And so we checked it out from the other end with a drone, which was really fun. And indeed, it does have line of sight. But when you're dealing with a lot of big buildings and a lot of trees, there's a lot of obstructions. So, getting it around that with the bridge, and then once you get it into there, then it spreads, it goes out behind the obstruction in the mesh. So, and so it's kind of fun sometimes to like identify these tiny little points that might connect. One of them was was just a peak of a building that I finally
So line of sight is important.
Well,
and what's the in your experience, a reasonable range to have between points in this?
Well, we had hoped that we could do 500 feet, but it's really not that far. So better reception closer to the access point. The bridges will go any distance. I mean, that you would ever need. So we can get it with the bridges from the gateway to a pocket where we can then because the bridge router connects by cable to a mesh router. So then it sends it out through the mesh. So we can get the mesh into those pockets pretty good at any distance. But once it's in there, the mesh routers, I think 300 feet is probably about the maximum. You start getting a lot of problems with interference and stuff.
Okay. So I want to bring Martin into the conversation a little bit now that we're getting into that, the mechanics of putting these together. So Martin, do you want to talk a little bit about how you kind of got involved in the project and sort of what changes have in terms of use of hardware and other things have you've kind of brought to the table as this project has expanded and matured?
So for context, Newport kind of got its hardware initially via Commotion Wireless, but eventually they got, I think you guys got in contact with MetaMesh from Pittsburgh, actually, who I think Adam, I'm forgetting his last name, provided plenty of those nodes. Adam.
Yeah, I'm forgetting too.
Oh, well, Adam from MetaMesh provided.
Adam from MetaMesh, right?
Yes, provided many nodes, and so
Longwell.
Longwell. There we go. So what these nodes are.
He originally worked with Commotion. So
yeah, I mean, everyone kind of comes from the same places. So these nodes, as they were before I came to the mesh, were, to put it simply, the same type of hardware, the same type of processor and chip and everything that you might find in a travel router. For anyone technical out there, it's an Atheros-based MIPS system on a chip that has a Wi-Fi out and can run Linux on it. And so that's exactly what they did. Commotion Wireless and MetaMesh, all of these projects.
Which is in Pittsburgh.
Yes. MetaMesh of Pittsburgh used to be called PitMesh for that particular reason. All of these projects use OpenWrt, which is more or less a system and manner with which you can build a system that can run on any router that you can get to boot with it. That might not make sense to most non-technical people, but think of it in the same way that you might think of, if you've ever done so, putting Linux on a laptop. A lot of laptops are fairly locked down. You may have heard of putting Linux on Chromebooks, and sometimes that doesn't work. But OpenWrt lets you put Linux on a router, and what MetaMesh did was they found a router that was nicely packaged against the weather and which you could have an antenna off of. And at that point, the rest is history. Because if there's one thing that works well under Linux, it is wireless devices, wireless radios that are produced by Atheros, the company that makes these, or the company that used to be making these. They've been absorbed by another company since. So these radios can do pretty much anything you want them to. Where normally you have a cell phone like this, which has I think it has a Qualcomm radio, but it doesn't do quite the same thing, which can connect directly to my router. Well, Atheros radios can connect pretty much any way you want them to. They can connect directly to a router. They can be an access point. They can connect to a cell of routers, multiple set of routers in an ad hoc manner. They can bridge. They can use what are called VIFs, which allow you to have multiple access points, like multiple, like a guest network and a normal network. For most routers, that's a difficult thing that requires them to make everything perfect in one nice package for the operating system that runs on the router. But in OpenWrt, it just all works when you have an Atheros radio. So what they realized very quickly is that, hey, if we can do all kinds of radio stuff on this, we should actually use some long since written at that time, that was around 2012, 13, to actually set up a mesh of routers. So what they did is they used a mesh protocol called OLSR, optimized. It doesn't matter what it stands for. You could
State Routing Protocol.
But OLSR allows you to re-announce the fact that one router has access directly to the internet to other routers. And those other routers can say, oh, well, that's how I'm going to get to the internet. You can announce other subnets too. The internet is just the whole subnet. It's everything else. But you could announce a smaller subnet, like the fact that if you wanted to share your home network with somebody else, or you have a specific network that has some devices on it, some servers on it that you want to serve up web pages. You could do that with OLSR.
My computer last
So,
working good.
I know.
there we go. Perfect. Thank you. What Newport Mesh did was they used these routers to essentially distribute and re-announce access back to that central gateway. And I come into the picture around, I think, mid 2019, maybe early 2019, because Newport Mesh has a problem acquiring new hardware. Adam Longwell was no longer kind of in the business. He wasn't able to continue putting these routers together. And more importantly, these aren't fast routers. They're very small. They can be put in small cases. So in fact, they could be well protected from the weather, but they don't do exactly what they need to do. So my background was as a computer scientist. I really love Linux. You know, I love playing with it, I love working with it. And I had a very intense interest in OpenWrt from, again, back in middle of college. So at some point when I was speaking with folks from Toronto Mesh, which is, as of very recently, doing a lot of big deployments alongside Cisco, which they hate, but don't tell them that, don't tell Cisco that. At some point, somebody mentioned that they had found listings for routers that you could actually, if you knew how to, replace the firmware on, especially interesting because these routers were available by the bucket load because the vendor, Meraki,
Oh, you got one. I went to get mine for show and tell.
The vendor, it was putting them to their end of life, basically. So this router, I can actually flip it over. I've got it opened up. I'm not going to diagram what's what, but you'll notice a system on a chip that's made by Atheros with the shield for the wireless. This is like a radio shield, like you see on your microwave where it's got those holes in it, kind of like that. This just protects the radios. This is perfect because the reason Meraki put this together this way was so they could change everything very quickly and do builds and change everything and make sure that they could patch everything and keep it secure and keep it running very quickly for a very long time. But that lets us build OpenWrt and run it on these routers. So all this is, it's just an access point that usually hangs on a wall inside of a building. It gets power right here, or it can take power over the Ethernet port, and it gives out wireless. The nice thing about this is that it's a 4 times upgrade, not in practice, but in theory, over the capacity of the GLI nets, those little travel routers that MetaMesh was able to provide. And these we could purchase, and for any of our listeners that is interested in it, or for anyone who sees this, you're free to contact me or contact Laboratory B. I'm sure Matt will make sure that there's a link. You can purchase these for about $3 a piece. $3, that's $3. So I went and bought as many as I could. And there are still hundreds more, probably thousands once they go real EOL. Mid next year, they will be no longer serviced by Meraki, so they will go into the dumps in hordes. And you can replace the firmware with OpenWrt, and it works like a regular router. The key is that with OpenWrt, you get full control, which then means that for Newport Mesh, we can do whatever we want. We can replace the firmware. We can debug things directly because we have access to the source code because it's all open source. So these have been fantastic because we've been able to, or Diane has been able to deploy them very readily. She's been able to essentially put them in people's houses. They're able to use both wireless bands, that's 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. That's Wi-Fi 4 for the people out there who really should learn to call it N and AN, but I won't judge. So it isn't as fast as some Wi-Fi can be, but for $3 a pop, that means that you can put them everywhere, which means that effectively you get your connectivity by making just a couple of hops away from the bridge, the other end of the bridge, that then hooks back up to the church. Now, in practice, this isn't the solve all. And many groups will go into the fight saying, you know what, why can't we make an entire internet out of just these? But what these are good for is making that last mile. You may have heard of the concept of that last mile wire, which ISPs, tiny little ISPs, are paid to provide because they're given access to fiber optic by the state. That's how pretty much any even close to half decent ISP, not talking about you Comcast, anywhere in any rural area provides that. And what these provide is the last couple of 100 feet wireless. It has the same principle whereby you've got access to wireless nearby and you just give one more hop and you've got that, where somebody can have one of these and it connects to another one of these that distributes the connection to the internet. But at the end of the day, the perhaps more important part about these and about in general reusing enterprise or even just consumer hardware to run OpenWrt or experiment with is the fact that anyone who wants to learn can grab one of these, follow a short list of instructions, and tinker with it without worrying that they're going to destroy a $100 device, because this is $3, three. You need a screwdriver and a cable and $3. So,
and Martin taught me how to flash them through the serial port.
Yes.
I am like, when I started out, the only thing years ago, the only thing I knew how to do was like use my email. That was it. And I followed his instructions. He did a tutorial on over the internet for us. And not only that, but we also have a gentleman who's volunteering who puts on all the external antennas for us. These external antenna connections are all done by Thad, who does it really fast now. He's done so many of them. And so you don't, if you're just willing to learn and follow the instructions that somebody like Martin will provide for you, you don't have to be an expert. And the cost is like amazing. It's like a real plus.
So can I ask one just kind of, again, sort of think now imagining we go, all right, so you've got the internet that comes into the church. It goes out to these kind of bridge routers. The Meraki then connects to the bridge router, and then maybe if
No, it connects to there's a access point router, which the old ones are the GLI nets, but we're replacing them with Merakis. They are cabled to the bridge at the access point. So really, all the bridge does is just act like a wireless cable, and then the mesh router then that sends it out to the other mesh routers.
Okay, so there's a Meraki attached to the bridge, and then the first Meraki then finds another one that's within range.
Several of them, hopefully.
Yeah, several of them, hopefully. But keep for the sake of example. And then if there's another Meraki that's out of range of the bridge router, but in range of the first Meraki, it connects and then it sort of funnels data through the intermediary back to the.
Yeah, you can go. Yes, they will connect with each other, which is good because if we do have a lot of problems with interference, but less since Martin has helped us out. If your location suddenly gets overwhelmed by somebody just turned on their high power, Wi-Fi for gaming or whatever, and kind of knocks your connection to the access point out a bit, the mesh router just seamlessly and automatically will connect up to the next best connection. So it will connect.
If it has 3 or 4 in range, it can kind of.
And the more you have, the stronger the mesh. So the better easier it is for the mesh to just connect up to some other connection, so you don't lose. I have been places where I'm looking at I know that there's no connection to the access point from this node, from this person's house, and I'm thinking but I still have internet. And oh, wait a minute, it's going through neighbor. It's like I didn't forget that. But if you lose that direct connection, you have a connection through the mesh, which is one of the advantages. So the more nodes, the better. But I wanted to show this, Martin. This is what I did today, all day. See this? Yep.
So whether it's Meraki or it's Arrowhive, I have one of these on my desk myself with the brand label from Mass Mesh, who actually, I wouldn't say discovered, but properly documented how to flash these routers. These you can get for about $6, $7, $8 on eBay each. Same exact thing, but they're even more powerful. And
they are up to the thing that Martin answered my prayer. You got to believe the universe is out there taking care of you because of issues with interference and the fact we live in such a densely populated area where there's a lot of Wi-Fi around. What I really wanted was something that was dual band, so we could somehow incorporate 5 gigahertz into that for the less interference factor, and then also something with a higher transmission power because the JLI nets only go up to 18. This one goes up to 24, even without the antennas. I don't know what these antennas are, but so it was really wonderful when he came with the Meraki's because they are dual band. And what we're doing now, we haven't figured out how to use the 5 gigahertz in the mesh yet.
We haven't quite tested it. It does.
Well, Martin, I think he's working on that. It will take some little like genius developer work or something.
It just requires testing more than anything, and that's the drudgery of it is. And I guess if you don't test it, you cause problems for people.
Well, my test didn't work out too good, I know. So yeah. So, but we are using the 5 gigahertz in the LAN. In other words, between the person's home router and their devices in the house, and that amount speeds it up a lot because that 5 gigahertz connection is really fast. So we do have. I can see who's what the connections are like, and I can see that a lot of people are connecting or streaming on 5 gigahertz at home. So
I have one other, just to kind of complete the flow from the consumer to the internet, and then I want to kind of invite the folks who are watching to, if they'd like to pose a question or send something in. Looks like Diane dropped off just there for a sec, so hopefully she'll be back in a moment. But what I'd like to dig into a little bit is this question of the of the kind of the upstream point, that the role of that church and in this. And Martin, I don't know if you're able to speak to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think for me there's sort of two questions. One is you kind of have some institution that essentially has a commercial grade connection, right? But then also, what does it look like almost regulatorily, or if you're providing people with internet from the perspective of the company that's providing that backhaul? Is it you more or less like, okay, we're going to buy 2 gigabits up and down or something like that, and then we're allowed to do what we want with it, and our members can receive that, or what does that look like?
That one always takes an enormous amount of organization. So Newport serves everybody that it does, and that's households. That's not necessarily considering anybody, sharing the Wi-Fi password with anyone else, which I'm sure it happens quite frequently. So I would ballpark maybe 40, 50 people use it daily on a shared 50 megabit per second connection, dedicated. So be aware that this is a dedicated connection. I'm sure everybody listening has had a moment in time where they weren't able to get any internet. And I don't believe Diane's backhaul has any downtime since its initial use, with exceptions for power outages, at which point it's not possible to tell whether the fiber's got light in it unless you shine it into your eye. Kidding. But the point of that mostly being, it certainly requires the central organization, in this case Newport Mesh, to determine exactly which company they want to go with, and to make sure that they purchase a dedicated business connection specifically with the allowance to redistribute it. Now, that's not to say that there aren't gray areas when you're looking at other community-run meshes. Newport is a fairly well-organized mesh in the context of things, but you can look at a mesh like Freifunk, free radio, I think it translates to in German, which in Germany, hi Dan, which in Germany, Freifunk just allows its members to advertise that they are offering their node as a gateway. So you've got wireless nodes, they connect to each other. Each client to the wireless mesh, wherever it is, there's plenty of maps if you just Google Freifunk map or use your search engine of choice. And then once you're connected, it picks the best router of all of the people in that submesh which are offering their internet connection up. So it can work in different ways. Just because Newport Mesh does it their way doesn't mean that you can't do it your own way.
So now that we've got Diane back,
Well, I was going to say we ran the pilot project that way, and from home internet, but because we were going to become a nonprofit and all that, it really does not meet terms of service for your internet service provider to do that. So we thought because we were going to be applying for grant money and stuff that we would not run it that way, but that was actually the original intention.
So Diane, can you tell us just a little bit about the specifics of, okay, so when you're doing it in that, the more formal kind of above board way of, essentially purchasing commercial internet, backhaul internet, what does that cost? How much do you get? Are there certain providers, are providers required to be able to sell it to folks who are going to resell it, or so what did that process look like? I think, for people who are imagining doing it in other places, I think that's always a key question.
You kind of have to pay a lot for what's carrier grade internet, which is symmetrical, and you're guaranteed. We have only purchased 50 megabits per second, and people say, wow, 50 megabits, I have that at home. That's like, how can you have 26 households on that? The actual fact is that, and I want to also mention my son, Fred Wiseman, who is senior IT specialist for Vermont Electric Co-op and an expert networker, who has also run a mesh. He ran a mesh in Hardwick about 10 years ago through PowerShift, I think it was. And so he had a lot of familiarity with, he said 50 megabits per second is going to be enough for you. And so with like 18 households on, we are not even using half of that, even at peak. So it goes a lot farther than you think it's going to go, but we do pay a lot of money for that because it's carrier grade. So as I said, at 26 subscribers, we will break even. We probably can't go, because of the limits of the equipment. We can upgrade to 100 megabits per second, and we should do that soon. Not because we're running out of bandwidth, but because we want to, I don't know, it's, when you're buying, they could practically charge you anything they want. So you want to get it before you're in a position where you can't go somewhere else. So we need to be thinking about that soon to upgrade. And then the cost goes even down more. It's like only a couple $100 more a month to double your bandwidth. So, we, basically that's it. The bigger you are, the more nodes you have, the less it's going to cost you. We can't probably go much beyond 100 megabits per second because that's going to be, our equipment is not probably going to be handling it. That's something that I'm going to talk to Martin about that some more.
So one related question then is the idea of, potentially having multiple backhaul sites.
Yes.
So you've got this church, but if you had another spot in another part of town where you had sort of second backhaul, second subscription, those also say 100 megabits or something like that, and someone was in between, would they be sort of connecting to one or the other? Sort of how does that work once you start having, scaling, right? Sort of.
This, in my wild fantasies, if I live long enough, I mean, I'm an old lady, so whether I'm going to live long enough to get this done or not, but, assuming we could get up to the maximum we could do at this gateway, then you do want to have another gateway because the redundancy is part of the good part of a mesh. If you have more than one provider, then if you have loss from one provider, you can get some service back by, just having the mesh served by the provider that you got back. So having multiple gateways is something that you should strive for in a mesh. And we would certainly do that because we have people calling us from all over the place who have heard about the mesh and say, I want this $15 a month internet. And I have to say, well, we don't have it there yet. But if we did, I think there would certainly be tons of people who would want to subscribe to it. So yeah, would be the plan, to find another gateway.
And for the places the sorts of locations that can do that, is it really that there's certain places like the church that are, just because of their location, ideal for that? Or is it more or less like, any commercial address you could get it wired in for not too much money, or what does that look like?
Well, for a gateway, where you are going to be having to shoot around obstacles, you probably do need something up pretty high. And for other access points, they don't necessarily need to be up super high, as long as they have a clear line of sight to the gateway. But I have been truly amazed at how nice people have been in general about having equipment put on their houses. It does cost them a little bit of money, like a couple, $3 a month in electricity, and we've had nobody really fuss about that. We do go to a lot of effort to make sure that the equipment is safe, everything is grounded, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, which is a lot of more work for us for installation, but we do that. And it's not always true for an access point, as long as the bridge router has line of sight to the gateway. We have one here at the gallery that's like on a pole that's only like 10 feet tall, but it just happens to be in the right location. And sometimes a lower access point is good, because if your access point is up really high, your pattern of the signal going out is like a bagel. It sometimes will go over the heads of people. If you want to get it to street level folks in those first floor apartments, having something down a little bit lower is helpful. And so we've actually started putting in double level access points, both wired, so that the tall one will get longer distance, folks farther away, and then the down lower one will catch people that are a little closer, more on street level. So because it's hard to get, I tried to find antennas that would have huge vertical coverage, but they just really don't exist. So you can't get more than like 20 degrees.
So looking at time, we've got about 10 minutes left in the hour. So I want to invite any of the folks who are watching, if you are interested in joining the conversation, and with the caveat that we are recording the conversation. So just sort of leave a comment in the chat and I can add you, or if you just want to sort of pose a question in the chat, feel free to do so. Any other things, so one thing certainly in Burlington that's kind of been on my mind, and I know some other folks as well, is, we went through the whole Burlington Telecom saga of kind of losing community ownership of that. And there's kind of price controls as part of the deal of the sale for about 5 years, but there's definitely been the thinking about, okay, well, more like 4 years now. That once that contract is up, is there space for alternatives and other things? And so I think there's definitely some interest in the mesh idea in our town around that, amongst the resilience ideas of having communication networks that could stay up if the internet goes down, and a variety of things. But Diane, what advice would you have to folks in our town or elsewhere who are interested in trying to do this, and in terms of like what first steps to take, what resources are the most helpful in terms of kind of getting going, and what kind of projects are, I feel like for a lot of these things it's important to have some small wins in the beginning to prove that it can work and build some momentum. So what are the sorts of kind of goals do you think are useful for people to set for themselves to kind of be built to start building towards something like this?
Well, we started with a pilot project based on what we learned from Commotion. I hopefully will be writing, some sort of tome on how to do a community mesh internet project, and hopefully that will be helpful to people and answer a lot of those questions. I think you do need at least one person with some who understands about networking or is willing to learn about it. It is more complicated than I realized at the beginning, and I've done a lot of studying online and had to learn a lot of stuff. So I'm really thankful that I had Fred and Martin's both have been a big help on the technical stuff. So but I think in Burlington you must have people. Here we don't have a lot of people in Newport who are interested in learning the technical stuff. So that's kind of an issue. But that's the first thing. And then you need to assemble a team of other people, somebody knows a little bit about a business, and then people who are handymen, like aren't scared to go up heights and stuff like that. And if you can find 4, 5, 6 people like that, and with some instructions from someplace that's done it, like us, you can start putting your routers up and then invent from there.
Cool. So we do have one question from Chris here. I'm a prospective customer. What does this look like on my device? Is it like a captive portal that I'm used to in my travels?
No captive portal. We sort of wanted one, but we couldn't put one on when we got the new firmware. So from MetaMesh, so we do not have that. It looks like your internet from Comcast. You join your network, you click on, you're on your network, and you do whatever you ordinarily do.
So is it like, everyone has like a password to log in separately, or is there just one that's...
Every router is password protected,
Mm-hmm.
and we encourage people to not share their passwords. We do not have anything open.
Okay, so is it each member has their own password, or
yeah,
is it...
Each home router has its own password. Nobody has passwords to the access points or anything like that.
I see, that makes sense.
So everybody has their home router password, and like I said, shouldn't share it. So as long as that connects you to your network. We also, because it's a mesh, we do not, like some home routers, like your Comcast router, you can do some things yourself. You can go in and put in, into your administrative section and do some stuff. You can't do that with our routers. The administration is all closed, which is a little safer, but maybe it's, unpleasant for people. But whoops, I'm stuck here.
Okay, so another question here from Adam. As a volunteer organization, how do you handle SLAs and monitoring?
And I can have a little bit of input. I know Diane will have the word to say, but as for my experience, essentially how it has panned out is that since each person is really doing something different, the only 2 people having anything directly to do with any type of monitoring are me and Diane, and I don't even bother with the traffic. I only have access to 1 or 2 nodes simply for the purpose of diagnostics. So it's
3.
Well, I don't know what the third one is, but and one of them isn't even a customer's node. One is just a bridging node, a relay, which uptime of 12 days and 2 gigs across it. That's a lot of data, all things considered. So we're too small to have a good answer to that. And the truth is that I just signed a thing that says I'm not going to watch the content of the transmissions. And I don't, because my whole purpose is to find out what is interfering with the transmissions, not what the transmissions are. Diane's the only one who has full access to any sort of...
Like any system, and this is true, people need to realize that for Comcast or whatever, anything is that systems administrators do have access to information. We have a privacy policy, which we require everybody to sign. All of our volunteers sign that they won't divulge any information, et cetera, et cetera. We don't, that they won't use any packet sniffing tools or anything like that. We do everything we can do to provide security. And also, let's see, what was I going to say? Security, now I can't remember. Lost my train of thought there, but okay.
Yeah,
Martin,
just the volunteer stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and okay, it was something else I was going to say, but I forgot what it was.
So one of
the monitoring, that's it. I remember now. Sorry, monitoring. We use 3 things to monitor. We monitor, we have Nagios, which is an open source program that monitors whether routers are up or down. We have a Cacti, which monitors bandwidth usage. And then we also monitor through one of the mesh routers all the links and link quality. And I pretty much am spending more time than is probably sane for any person doing that.
So one other question here, and then we'll move to wrap up the conversation. Actually, there's one more as well. So one quick one was just, can I choose which router I use? And I think, and tell me if I'm wrong about the answer here, but my understanding is more or less that each customer kind of has access to their particular router, but it's not like something where you go around and could be next to someone else's house and see that that's a Newport Mesh house, like you would the Xfinity type things where you see, oh, I see there's Xfinity Wi-Fi close by, I can use that for my internet.
Well, if you have a laptop, we have GL iNets, the little routers that we're not using that much anymore. We'll plug directly into your laptop. If you connect to that router, you can go anywhere. You're connected to your router, and that's the only password that you're knowing. But you will then connect to any router in the mesh that you're near. So you could take that up the street and still have internet connected to your own private router. That would be the only way you could do that.
And then so final question is from Solveig. Would it be possible to get a copy of the contract for the backhaul service to see clauses regarding distribution of access and sharing of the connection with mesh members? I'm wondering if the current commercial providers of internet access who want to keep their prices at 100, 150 a month per household would want to block sharing of connections. I'm thinking of current users of Comcast, Spectrum, BT. That's
why we have carrier grade, which is the understanding that you will be sharing it. That's what it is, and it costs a lot more than your home internet. So yeah, so that's basically it. They charge you for with the understanding that you are going to be like a mini ISP.
So you know, if you were able to provide us kind of some information about the contract to share with Solveig, just in terms of what the language looks like, would you be able to do that?
Sure, if I write it down so I don't forget it.
Okay, perfect. Cool.
And I have read carefully the contracts for both business internet and home internet, and those definitely, for business internet, they'll only allow you to share it with your immediate customers. If you can, in your business. So I don't know if you could convince the people all over the section of Newport or actually have some connection to the gallery. I don't know, but and your home internet basically. Not only that, but you can't connect stuff to it. You're not supposed to do anything to it or share it with anyone.
So is it different?
Especially not charge money for it if you charge.
So is it different companies that versus the sort of consumer and business companies that provide? Like, what is the company that you have a subscription?
Yeah, the fiber optic is through Consolidated.
Okay.
We looked at 3 different companies and they understood best what we were talking about. I would like to switch to one of the community internet providers. I'm trying to think. I can't remember the name of it though. But anyway, they don't have control of any fiber optic cable in Newport yet. That would be great, but we're stuck with what we have. Anybody has any other suggestions for companies? I would, I'd love to shop around.
So I know that's been a big question. Some of the Burlington scheming was thinking about that. So that'd be great to get just a little bit of further information about. But yeah, so let's move into kind of a quick wrap up. So Martin, any final thoughts you'd like to share, just kind of around what this experience has been like, and any advice you'd have to people looking for more info?
It's definitely advice. So in the context of what a mesh is and what it can be for you, the whole point of an open source device and an open source device ecosystem is that it is what you make it. If you have the interest and the time, or even better, if you have a set of friends that have enough interest and time to make it, they may not have all the skill sets they need, but if they work together, then you can build something like this for a completely different purpose, if you so choose. If you want to have, for example, I have my little farmer's market and we have a 10 megabit a second connection up, and we really hate the fact that nobody has cell service here and nobody can figure out how to take a picture of a zucchini that is really beautiful, and they'd love to share it with their friends, but they have to wait till they get home. If you decide that you'd like your farmer's market to be hooked up with internet, congratulations. It's not too hard. You buy a box of the Meraki's for about $30, you wire them up and you're done. That's just one purpose. The whole point of an open source base of software is to provide anything you can imagine, as long as you have the potential to apply those skills. It's not so easy with a router that your ISP gives you to hack into that type of thing and to make the changes necessary to do something like this. But if, and you can, I should say specifically, it's no more expensive. In fact, it's much less expensive to use this open source hardware, reuse this open source hardware. If you have the skill set and the interest or the reason to apply it, you can always apply it. Whether it's sharing one big properly licensed quote unquote internet connection, or an internet connection from your home, which you have a VPN through and enough ways to conceal the fact that you are sharing your internet connection with a bunch of other people, which by and large, it's really difficult for ISPs to prove anything if you are using a VPN properly with regards to traffic sharing. And that's actually exactly how Freyfunk works, although it isn't in fact illegal or even possible to restrict somebody from sharing their internet connection in Germany. But totally different story. The point is that if you have the interest and if you have a desire to try some of the stuff out or tinker with some of the stuff yourself, not just as a customer, but as a participant, please reach out. There will be people who will be jumping on the boat to try to give you this stuff and show you how this stuff works, because at the end of the day, what we want to do more than anything is to just make things happen, to make it possible to accomplish things. We keep our fingers crossed that somebody will do some work on it and have something completely new that we never thought of and that we can use. And that happens every single day coming from Tomesh, where I'm getting half of my ideas for how to restructure the mesh because OLSR v1 is very old.
Yeah,
this is our experiences.
Talk about that.
There need to be upgrades made to this
Yeah.
hardware at Newport Mesh, and that's a major challenge because these nodes are already deployed. Another example is getting these to work with the most recent version of OpenWrt requires us to be very careful, or specifically me to be very careful about how I write my patches to the OpenWrt maintainers so that these can actually be upgraded without being pulled down at all. So it is definitely a challenge. It becomes very quickly, once you reach a certain level of, I kind of understand how it works, then the problem is not hardware. Hardware is easy, it's people. So that's exactly why I make the big point, hey, make sure it's always, if you have a reason to use it, don't fear the hardware because it comes very quickly. Diane's a great example of that. Understanding how the hardware software works, it's easy. It's the people that are hard and need the benefit. For the real complicated stuff.
I love it though. I mean, I love it.
You know, like if you're managing 10 or 20 nodes and not 54 like Diane is, that's a different story. But, you know, don't be afraid of it. Yeah, and I'll have one more comment, please, Matt. Diane mentioned a wonderful thing that actually in the Vermont State education requirements for, I think, high school, is it? That there is an element there that high school students are supposed to be taught about wireless communications.
Yes, the standards for science include wireless communication. And so it's an absolutely perfect opportunity to try to involve some young people, especially since they have trouble getting education these days.
And getting Wi-Fi. So that's one place where I've been thinking for the future about things I can do that are new rather than trying to maintain old things. And the thing that excites me the most there is that I remember when I was about 16, 17, 18, and tinkering with some OpenWrt and thinking to myself, wow, this is so difficult to figure out because I don't have the resources, because I don't have anyone who can tell me how to do this. I had to figure it out all myself. Well, I would have loved if somebody had come and given me some router, and knowing that way that I feel that given the true cost of these routers, it's basically zero. I want more than anything to be able to share that with other people, and it's exactly why I'm hoping in the future to be able to bring a box of these routers to some school and help a teacher come up with a nice, short, simple, not necessarily short, but a piece of, what do you call it when a teacher, a curriculum, there you go, around
We're working on one. Colleen and I are working on
and that's fantastic. You should share that with me. Yeah, that's cool.
Cool.
My thoughts.
All right.
I wanted to mention also quickly that regarding the home internet, is there was a fellow a few years ago who did that. He set up a lot of routers around Newport, and he was running it off of, I guess, his home internet, and he was charging people. He got busted. for theft of services. So we don't want to follow that route.
So any final thoughts from you, Diane?
Oh, I could just go on forever and ever. I don't know what to say other than wireless is just wonderful magic, and I wish, you know, we could just get some more people interested in it. It's absolutely entrancing, and I'm so thankful that I have Martin to help, not help, he's doing stuff. I'm glad he's helping.
I'm helping, Diane. You're the one who needs the things changed. If without any thing change, I don't know how to use Wi-Fi, and that's cool, I guess.
I was getting paranoid thinking that we were under attack, and actually he figured out what the problem was, that we needed a beacon interval change, and I never would have known that.
So to learn more, what's the Newport Mesh website, or what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you guys?
The website is great. It's newportmesh.org. And it has all about the mesh. And also I do every month I do educational video, animated, kind of technically getting better at that. They're kind of bad sometimes, but they're getting better. And the last one I just put up explains about how information gets to you on the mesh. And then also you could go to our Facebook page, which is Newport Wireless Mesh on Facebook. And that also has stuff posted.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share tonight. This has been the kind of first of what will hopefully be a somewhat regular Thursday evening Laboratory B hosted set of conversations about different interesting things people are doing in terms of tech and community in Vermont. So if you want to keep an eye out on that, our Facebook page is Laboratory B. You can find us at laboratoryb.org. We're Burlington's member-supported hackerspace. So with that, I will stop the recording.